Hey family, happy Tuesday and welcome to our 15-minute daily devotion. You all know I'm always so honored that you log on during this time to share your time of day with me, and I'm so grateful that you are here. Listen, on behalf of our senior pastor, Dr. Jamal H. Bryant, thank you for coming. I hope that you had a wonderful Mother's Day. I pray that your week is off to a fabulous start and that you are ready to take on the week in ways that you've never done it before. I hope that you are going into it inspired, empowered, and absolutely blessed. Listen, if you are not connected with me, I'd love for you to do so on social media. You can follow me at Ms. Karri Baby on Instagram. And I also want to make sure that you are connected with the church. Make sure that you're following New Birth on all social media platforms. And of course, you can always stay up to date with the latest on our website. Listen, we have for the last couple of weeks, come on in. Listen, I see you guys coming in. Come on in. For the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about investing in yourself. And I want to continue along that vein today. I want you to give me some hearts if there have been something over the last couple of weeks that have blessed you, that have pushed you, and that have caused you to rethink how you are handling and managing investing in your own life. Listen, today I want us to stay in those same lines, but we're going to focus on a different part of investing in yourself. Today, I want to talk about capacity. Yeah. As we are thinking about investing in ourselves, I want you to think about what is your capacity. Wherever you are, I want you to write that in the chat. That's what we're going to be taking notes on and focusing on this week. What is your capacity? So listen, as you begin to invest in yourself, right, you will begin to know who you are and the weight of what you carry. I'm going to say that again. As you begin to invest in yourself, you will also begin to know who you are and the weight of what you carry. You'll start to realize what you bring to the table, how your gifts and your talents, how your presence, hear this, impacts the spaces that you occupy, impacts the spaces that you go into when you show up as your full self. Yeah. Not as a duplicate, not as a replica, not as a carbon copy of something or somebody else. But when you show up into spaces as your full self, the person that the Father has intended for you to be, you will also then begin to recognize what your personal strengths and weaknesses are. You'll begin to know what your areas of strength, what are you strong in? You'll begin to have a footing in what you're good at, in what you know, the things that you can touch and multiply. You know the things that when you touch them, they are blessed. You are strong in some areas. You will also begin to know what your weaknesses might be. There might be some areas that you are not as strong in. And as a leader, in order to live a very healthy and effective life, can I tell you, the way to be balanced is to know both. You've got to know what you are strong in, and you got to know what some of your weaknesses may be also. You will always have a problematic leader that only knows when they're strong, but they're not willing to admit what their weaknesses are. Run from those type of leaders. Run from those type of people who will never talk about their weaknesses, but only highlight everything that involves them being strong. Because as humans, even Christ had weaknesses, and we saw that at the cross. Even Paul displayed times where there were weak moments because of humanity. And so every leader has that. But in order for you to grow, or as you grow into these areas, you will gain greater knowledge about your personal capacity. Listen, write this down. Capacity is the potential or the suitability for holding, for storing, for accommodating something. Capacity is the maximum amount that something can contain. It is the volume or the size of a thing. It is the amount that something can produce. Are you all writing this down? Write down what capacity is. Capacity is fully occupying the available area or space. Yeah. Capacity is the ability to fulfill a specific role or position. It is also the ability or power to do, hear this, experience, hear this, or understand something. Capacity is a person's legal competence or their ability to comprehend. This is all of these things is what capacity means. Listen, when we began to ignore capacity, when we began to be ignorant to capacity, it then breeds deception. I'm going to say that again. Ignorance to capacity breeds deception, which then can lead to repeated cycles of dysfunction. When you ignore capacity and all that it means, it then creates a level of deception in your life where you think that you can handle something, or you think that you lack the ability to handle something, and you are deceived by that thing, which allows you to remain in cycles that can be dysfunctional because you've not yet fully understood what capacity means in your life. Listen, capacity is directly connected to identity, which we've talked about each week. Y'all might get tired of me saying it, but I'm going to tie it in. Capacity is directly connected to identity, which is directly connected to purpose. And you know that we've talked about that. Knowing who you are creates an understanding of capacity, which then helps you to understand what you can hold and what you can support. The question that I have for you, and I want you to write this down, put it in the chat, I want you to put it in your journal, in your notebook. Do you know what your capacity is? Yeah. Do you know what you can hold? Do you know what it will take, hear this, to support you and the vision that God has given to you? Listen, the truth is the call of God on your life is mammoth. Can I tell you that? The truth is the call of God is so vast and large on your life that at times it can be overwhelming for you. If I'm talking to you, I want you to just put in the chat right now, Pastor, you are talking to me. Listen, the call of God is so big on your life. Can I tell you that when you begin to think about it, you start to get overwhelmed. Some of us start having to take deep breaths. You got to close your eyes sometime and lean back because you can't even believe that he is speaking to you, telling you to do this thing. And so what happens is when you begin to think about the vision that God has given to you, when you begin to think about the things that the Father has told you he has placed within your hand, you can become so overburdened by it, hear this, that it becomes easier for you to walk away from it rather than to run to it. Yeah, you can become so overwhelmed by the vision of God on your life. I'm not talking about your friend's life. I'm not talking about your mother's life or somebody else's life that you know, somebody you feel might be famous. Listen, I'm talking about the vision that the Father has given to you. It can become so overwhelming that it makes you tremble. It makes you begin to second guess yourself. And what happens is it becomes easier for you to lay it down rather than to execute it. Why? Because it becomes easier to lay it down because then you don't have to deal with it. You lay it down because that means that it becomes comfortable to ignore it rather than having to address it. When something large and overwhelming comes into your life that you feel like you are not equipped to deal with, it is easier to lay it to the side because laying it to the side means that you don't have to deal with you. It means that you really don't even have to deal with God. It means that you really don't have to come face to face with it, but you can lay it down and ignore it. You can bury it. You can allow it to remain quiet and dormant because that means that you don't have to deal with it. You don't have to pay any attention to it. But can I tell you something? It doesn't matter how often you try to bury it. Yeah. It doesn't matter how often you try to think your way out of it. It doesn't matter how many excuses you make for it. It is still there. As a matter of fact, it's the thing that is deep within your belly. It is the thing that is deep within the resources of your heart and your mind that even when you try to shake this thing, you can't even fully get away from it. Why? Because that thing is attached to you. It is attached to the soul of who you are and every single thing that God has called you to do. Listen, the reason that you feel overwhelmed by it, can I tell you, is because you begin to think about the resources that are required to execute it and you feel like you ain't got them. I want somebody to just, if you all are with me, I want to see some hearts today. You feel overwhelmed by it because you feel like you don't have any real support to do what you need to do to make it come to pass. And the truth is, if we are honest with ourselves, typically the thing that the Father has called you to do, you don't even feel like you have the real skills, the real education, the real fortitude to get it done. And so what happens is you abandon it because you are unaware and or insecure about your capacity, hear this, to handle it. What's more is that it's a reflection of your lack of trust in God, and you being incognizant and arrogant at the same time. Because listen, the one who created you, the one who has given you the vision for it, has given it to you based upon the capacity that he sees in you, the capacity that he has endowed you with, not something that you have ordained for yourself, not something that you have concocted for yourself, but this is something that God has given to you. And oftentimes when God does it for you, when God downloads it to you, you will feel inadequate to accomplish it. Are y'all with me? Listen, I'm just telling the truth today. There are some things that I feel completely inadequate to do because I don't recognize what God sees in me, the capacity that he has given to me in order to accomplish the thing. Listen, which is great, because hear this, it helps us to know that we cannot depend on ourselves alone, but we have to depend on the Holy Spirit in order to accomplish that in which the Father has given us the capacity to execute. Listen, investing in yourself is being ever knowledgeable of your capacity, hear this, in both the natural and in the spirit. When you are, hear this, forthright with yourself about your strengths and your weaknesses, ultimately you become honest about your capacity. You then can begin to have a greater understanding of what it's truly gonna take in order for you to accomplish the vision that God has given to you. You will then know who and what you will need in order to insulate yourself with the support in the areas of your weakness, and then how to maximize your strengths so that you are operating at a higher level. What am I saying to you about knowing your capacity? What I am telling you is that when you begin to understand your capacity, you then can identify your weaknesses, which is to then say, I've got to build a team, or I've got to build a support system that helps to fill in the gaps for what I lack. The things that I don't know, let me build a support system around me so that I won't be in lack in those areas. Even if I don't know them, I can build an infrastructure of people around me, of resources around me that have what I don't have. That's what great leaders do. Listen, it also then helps you not just to understand and insulate your weaknesses, but it also helps you to increase, listen, and to turn up in the areas that you are already strong. If you really looked at your life, if you really paid attention to where you are and how you are you operating at your highest level even in your strengths? The truth is, most of us are not. Most of us are operating at 50%. Some of us might be at 80. Some of us might be at 25%, and some of us are lower than even that. Why? Because we dwell so much on our weaknesses and our inability to pad our weaknesses with resources that we then don't have the strength to focus on our strengths so that we're maximizing what we need to do. Can I tell you, these are balanced leaders. Balanced leaders understand their capacity, their weaknesses, and their strengths so that they will know how to move. Can I tell you that your vision is going to require a more transparent you? Are you guys writing this down? Your vision is going to require a more focused, a more determined, a more disciplined you. Your vision is going to require more of you. It's going to start to pull on you in the spirit. It's going to even start to pull on you in the natural. It's going to demand more of you. It's going to ask more of you than it has ever asked you before. And that means that you are going to have to build a team or a support system in order to help you get it done. I hope y'all are writing this down. If this is blessing you, if you're learning something, I want you to just give me some hearts right now and say, Pastor, this is blessing me. Listen, I want to give you this quote. Warren Bennis said this. He said, leadership is the capacity to translate vision hear this, into reality. Ultimately, vision ought to become the reality. Vision shouldn't be vision forever. The Bible says that it shall speak and not lie. So at some point in time, the vision that you carry, you ought to be giving birth to it so that it is then something that moves outside of your spirit, something that then moves outside of your flesh, moves outside of your mind, and it is manifested in the space that you are in. That's what happens when vision becomes reality. Listen, today I want to focus on a passage that many of you may very well know. It is in Exodus 18. We're going to read 13 through 23. It's quite a bit, but I think it's going to be so good, so helpful today for us as we tie in our capacity, talking about investing in ourselves and moving forward. Listen, so when you got it, say, Pastor, I got it. Somebody put it in the chat. It's Exodus 18, 13 through 23. I'm going to start reading. It says, the next day, Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people. And they stood around him, hear this, from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, what is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all of these people stand around you from morning until evening? Moses answered him and said, because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions. Moses' father-in-law replied, what you are doing is not good. This is not good what you're doing. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. You're going to burn out if you keep doing this. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Verse 19 says, listen now to me. This is Jethro talking to him. It says, listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must, listen, he says, you must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. He says this, but select capable men from among all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men, who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. Do you all hear this? Simple cases they can decide for themselves. That will make your load lighter, because they will share it with you. The last verse says that will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. Listen, today I want to highlight just a few areas of our text that I think will be so helpful as we discuss capacity and investing in ourselves. Listen, one of the things that we've got to think about, let me tell you, if you've not got time, I want you to go back and study this passage. I want you to really take some time and walk through it, because what is happening is Jethro is coming back to visit Moses, bringing his wife and his family. And when he gets there, what he notices is that Moses is in a position where he is doing so much of the work by judging the people day in and day out from sun up to sundown. He says, hey, listen, son, you're not going to be able to do this. If you continue at this rate, you are going to burn yourself out, and this is not good for you. Let me give you a strategy. Let me give you a plan so that you are able to look at your capacity, maximize your strengths, understand what your weaknesses might be in this context, and then create a system, create a team of people so that you are not having to do the work alone. Listen, I want to highlight a few things that I think are so helpful very quickly out of this text that we can walk away from. Number one, hear this, write this down. You have to have the ability to heed wise counsel. When you are looking at investing in yourself and even considering your own capacity, you've got to be able to heed wise counsel. What does that mean? You've got to be surrounded by some elders, some people who are seasoned, some people who are wise, that are able to see how you are moving in ministry, how you are moving in leadership, how you are moving in business, where they can provide provide a level of advisement and critique and wisdom for you that you cannot see yourself. Sometimes you've got to have people that are outside of the scope of what you're doing so that they are able to look into what you're doing. Listen, these are people who love you and support you, who want you to have a long-term success. They're then going to offer you wisdom and advice that's going to help you devise a plan so that you can maximize your strength and insulate your weaknesses. Listen, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, was saying to him, listen, you're not going to be able to continue this like this. You've got to do it a different way. If you don't, then what happens is you will burn out and you won't be able to accomplish that in which the Father has called you to. So that's number one. You've got to have the ability to heed wise counsel. Number two, you've got to know your own physical and emotional limitations. Listen, Moses was judging day in and day out, morning until evening. This is what the text tells us. You will be in a position oftentimes where you are actively working your vision. Listen, when you are actively working your vision, it will start to take a toll on you, both physically and emotionally. Can you imagine what it must have been like for Moses to sit there day in and day out from sun up to sundown, listening to people's problems, listening to their issues, having to hear them go back and forth about a thing, having to give wisdom, having to give advice on what to do, having to judge, having to consult God. Can you imagine the emotional toll that it took on him, having to pour out every single day, but not being in a, listen, what is happening for him? What type of pour is he receiving in the process? What is he doing to ensure his own emotional health? Not just the emotional side, but the physical side. Can you imagine physically having to be up all day? Y'all know what I'm talking about, all day long listening to people. We don't know if he was sitting, if he was standing, but either way, there's a level of physicality that went into working the call of God on his life, and that can begin to take a toll on you. And so what you've got to know is, listen, I've got some emotional and physical limitations. Limitations doesn't mean that you are unable to do it, but it's you recognizing that I have got to create some lines of delineation for what's going to work for me as I continue to do this. And that moves into my point number 3. You've got to create some boundaries. Listen, as you are understanding your capacity, you've got to know how to create boundaries for your life. Listen, the text says, because the people come to seek me, this is what Moses is saying, the people come to seek me to seek God's will. And whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me. Listen, Moses had no boundaries. He had no boundaries in place. Whenever the people came to him, he felt obligated to address the needs of the people. No matter how he might have been feeling, no matter how or what he might have been doing, he didn't have boundaries. So the needs of others superseded his own capacity. Just because you can do it doesn't mean that you have the capacity for it. Because at some point that capacity begins to run out and you're in a space where you have a deficit. And so you've got to know the difference. So you don't need to feel bad for creating boundaries in your life. You got to create boundaries and recognize when you need, listen, to get some assistance. The next thing, number 4, is you've got to recognize, hear this, you've got to admit and you have to accept when the work is too heavy for you to handle alone. The text says Moses' father-in-law replied, what you're doing is not good. He says, you and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. Both you and the people gonna be tired. Listen, the work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Can I tell you, every great leader has a moment in their life, really regular moments in their life, where they are forced to admit, this is too much. Listen, this is too heavy for me. This is not a sign of weakness, but this is actually a sign of strength, because it helps you to know that you cannot do it alone. If you have a vision that allows you to accomplish everything on your own, the vision is too small, and I would question whether or not it comes from God. Because what the Father is going to ask you to do is going to be greater than anything that you could imagine being able to do on your own. It is going to stretch you, and it is going to require more of you. So you've got to be able to be in a space of humility where you can recognize, admit, and accept, listen, this is too much for me. I need to get some help. I cannot do this all alone in my own strength. And I know that we're a part of a generation that loves isolation. We're part of a generation that loves being disconnected from people. But can I tell you, this thing that God has called you to do requires community. It requires people that God has divinely assigned to you so that you're able to complete the task. Listen, number 5, and I'm almost done. You've got to be prepared to shift roles. The text says, you must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. What does that mean? There might be a way that you operated in one season, but that doesn't mean that you have to operate in that same way in every season of your life. You've got to know how to pivot. You've got to know how to shift roles. You've got to know how to play a different part. Listen, everything you did in one season is not what you're going to need to do in this season. Moses needed to know how to shift. He needed to know that what worked for him in the past was going to lead to burnout, and so he had to be willing to do something different. Can you shift roles right now? Can you pivot in your life right now if your next level depends on it? Come on. Number 6, and I'm almost done. You've got to be able to mentor, hear this, build a team, hear this, and delegate responsibility. When you realize you cannot do it all on your own, you've got to be able to mentor, you got to be able to build a team, and you got to be able to delegate. And this is all about investing in yourself still. Listen, the Bible says that Jethro told him, teach them his decrees and instructions and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. He says this, but select capable men from all of the people who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s. Listen, this is good strategy right here. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring the very difficult cases to you, the simple cases they can do on their own. Listen, can I tell you, this is so good to me. Can I tell you, you are managing things that are beneath you. Yeah. Can I tell you, you can't even execute the vision of God at the high level because you are working on things that are below your call and below your pay grade. You've got to be willing to mentor people. This is no knock for the people who serve under you or with you, but you've got to be willing to mentor people, to teach them what you know, to give them your scent as you follow the Father, so that they are then able to work the plan that you already have in place for the vision that God has given to you. You've got to build a team of people who have the heart of God, a team of people who are not out for selfish gain, a team of people who are not in it for their own pursuit and vanity, but for people who love God and want to see the vision go forth. And then after you build those teams, you've got to be willing to delegate responsibility. One of my greatest challenges as a leader, and I'm just going to confess to y'all, I don't like to delegate responsibility because I don't feel like nobody gonna do it the way that I do it. But can I tell you, that is a weak way of thinking, and it is poor leadership, because what happens then is that I'm bogged down with the things that I could delegate, and I cannot operate at the higher level to do what I need to do. Listen, Jethro told him, tell them to only bring the difficult things to you. You can't manage the difficult things because you are still bogged down in the simple things. You are bogged down in the things that can resolve themselves, or if you lend to people who are assisting you, they can take care of it for you. You can't be in the weeds in this season of your life. You've got to be in a space where you can focus on the greater vision, the higher things, and let people that you mentor, train, and develop do the rest for you. Finally, number 7, you've got to be mature enough, hear this, you've got to be secure enough to share the load. I don't know who I'm talking to, but I want you to just type in, you got to be mature enough. This is number 7. You've got to be secure enough to share the load. Listen, the last thing that Jethro tells him in our text today, he says that will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. Listen, in order to be a healthy leader, in order to be a good leader, in order to be a person who is investing positively in themselves, you've got to step out of a space of insecurity. You've got to step out of a space of arrogance, and you've got to come into humility in your leadership, understanding that everything that you you do is for the greater good. It's for the greater vision of your life. If Moses was an insecure leader, if Moses was a envious leader, if Moses was an arrogant leader, he wouldn't have been able to heed the wisdom of Jethro, because he would have been afraid that if I mentor somebody else, they will rise up better than me. If I mentor somebody else, y'all don't even hear me, they will take my title. If I mentor somebody else, if I invest in teams of people, these teams will want to take my job. These teams will feel like they're closer to God than I am. He would have cut his own nose off to spite his own face. How many of us have hurt ourselves because we have been so insecure in creating new leaders, hear this, that we can't even get the work done. The kingdom doesn't even advance because we are so worried about people taking our positions and our seat. But can I remind you today that whatever the Father has assigned to you, it is for you. I don't care who come along. I don't care how gifted and talented they are. That's wonderful. I can add them to my team. Just because they're added to your team doesn't mean that they have the grace to do your job. And you've got to know the difference. A part of what you have done wrong as a leader and investing in yourself is you've run off people that God has assigned you to mentor in order for them to be of value and asset to you as you do the work of the Lord. And so as you move forward, you've got to be secure enough in knowing I can duplicate myself and not worry. I can duplicate myself and make sure that the kingdom works get done. Listen, the truth is you already should be thinking about your replacement in whatever area you are in, so that you can begin to have somebody in place even when the Lord transitions you. It won't be abrupt, but you will already have a system. Listen, I've always believed, and I live by this. I have done it and proven it in my own life, that as you grow and as the Lord begins to prepare and elevate you, the sign of a great leader is not your ability to simply build. The sign of a great leader is your ability to build and create systems and develop people that can work the system so that what you built is sustainable. How good is it that if after you transition, everything falls apart because you are not there? And this is a part of a spirit that many of us have, particularly in the church, even in the marketplace, where we feel if we can't do it, then it cannot be done. Can I tell you that that's a lie? Does that mean that people can do it like you? Absolutely not. But there is something in you that should understand that if this is God's vision, hallelujah, if this is the work of the Lord that I am doing, if I'm not here, God is still going to make sure that it gets done. So what I want to do is have the Lord be pleased with how I steward and manage the vision that he has given to me for my life, because I know that my life's vision directly ties into the kingdom's vision. When you understand that, you will begin to look at your life, your call, your ministry, your work, your business, your education. You will look at all of these things differently, and you won't see mentorship as some type of threat, but you will see it as help to advance the kingdom. I remember, and I'm about to wrap up, I remember calling someone and asking them, man, can you mentor me? I don't really know a lot about ministry. I've grown up in church, but there's another side to it that I've not matured into. Can you mentor me? The person said, you don't need a mentor. And I just kind of froze. I didn't even know what to do with that information. But she said, you don't need a mentor. I don't need to mentor you. Basically, don't worry about it. At the moment, I was crushed. But as I began to pray about it and as I began to think about it, I realized that it was a gift from the Lord, because not every person is called to mentor us, but what it did place in me was a heart to mentor, so that I can provide for other people what has not been provided for me, what I was unable to get, and to do so in a way that is honorable, where I'm not insecure, where I'm not threatened, but this becomes my way of life, so that I'm able to pull other people up to take my current position as I begin to transition and move on to something else. So listen, I pray that you were blessed today. I pray, listen, that you were inspired today, that you walk away having a greater understanding of investing in yourself by knowing what your capacity is, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and looking at our passage in Exodus to be able to help fortify that information. Listen, I love you all. I pray that you were blessed. I pray that you are pushed by this, and that you take some time to go back and meditate on this text. Study it on your own. Ask the Lord to give you some fresh revelation about it as you apply it directly to your own life. Listen, on behalf of our senior pastor, Dr. Jamal H. Bryant, myself, every pastor, every leader, every volunteer at New Birth, we love you. We are praying for you. And we pray that the Lord gives you the wisdom, the strength, and the ability to know your capacity so that you are able to expand in ways that are healthy, beneficial for you, ultimately God, and ultimately the kingdom. I love you. Have a great day.